happening around him, that gentleman who was taking the photos with his camera. And I felt like he wasn't keying off of what was going on.
We can't admit he was hit by the car, correct?
Well, we don't know. We don't know if the camera. No, we don't know if the camera hit the car.
He was hit by the car.
We don't know if the camera was hit by the car in his hand.
We don't know that.
Disrupt and impede.
What are you
Do you have
suggesting
quantitative statistics to support this conclusion?
Yeah.
I read the article in the New York Post that went chapter and verse through all the training.
Everything in the Post is absolutely right.
I know it's not convenient to your narrative, but they're training to impede and obstruct. I feel like I'm taking.
But that doesn't justify getting shot. And there's a cause and effect here.
I can't speak to the crazy pills, but in the video.
I mean, you're denying
in the video,
things that have been openly reported.
Scott, listen, I'm not going to treat the New York Post like the Bible.
I don't like it. I hate this. I don't like it when U.S. citizens or anyone dies in any kind of a engagement with law enforcement like this. But this person exercised extremely poor judgment and put themselves in harm's way, probably committing a felony in the process, and this is the result.
Can I just ask how you not see this in the gray area? That was great. That was a great
gray area?
Yeah. The police officer walks around the front of the car. So the way it was initially told, and by the way, I'm not left or right, so don't think I'm a liberal and so I'm automatically going to defend. But the way it was initially described by Kristi Noem was that this car was going after him almost like as though the car was going down the street. He winds his way around after 6 months earlier having been dragged by a car. So he did put himself in harm's way. That doesn't mean she was right to do it. But the problem that I have with this conversation generally, not you personally, is one side wants to see it one way and one side wants to see it the other way, and there ain't no middle ground, and there is. She should have listened to the command. He should not have been where he was. He overreacted. I know it's easy to say, and I think that we have to get in the middle somewhere on this and recognize that two people were wrong.
I disagree with that completely. I don't see this as a gray area at all, and I certainly don't see her playing a role in her own death, Scott. I mean, you can see even law enforcement officials have played the video frame by frame. Earlier, Anderson Cooper had a guest who was playing the video frame by frame, and you see in every frame she's turning her vehicle away from the ICE officer. They are approaching her. She was not going at him. She was trying to get away because they were approaching her vehicle. You also hear him in this video refer to her as an effing bitch. None of this seems like someone who should be in a position of filming her on his phone. He is the officer. He is the one with the weapon.
You just watched the entire power imbalance on display in a few seconds. The lady as the driver, she's calm. She's talking. She's even saying, "I'm not mad at you." He's the one screaming, charging the car, yanking the door, gun in hand, phone in the other, then effing bitch. That's not fear. That's contempt. That's not de-escalation. That's a man looking at a citizen like trash. And then they have the nerve to roll this as evidence he acted in self-defense. You don't scream effing bitch at someone you're terrified of. You do that to someone you think you can punish.
In a position of filming her on his phone, he is the officer. He is the one with the weapon. He has all the power in this situation. Regardless if she's a protester or not, you were saying those things almost as if it justifies her being shot by him. That's just not true. Since Trump's second term, there have been 16 shootings involving ICE agents. 4 of those have resulted in death, including Good. Other times, there have been 14 incidents.
Listen to how soft the framing is. DHS says this backs up their story. The vice president agrees. Critics argue the opposite. Then Gallego asks the obvious, why is he filming with one handgun in the other? Why is he in front of the vehicle at all when every training manual says don't do that? Why did he keep shooting after she moved past him? Those are not racial questions. Those are day one accountability questions. And the answer they are dancing around is simple. He ignored the protocol. He escalated. He fired anyway.
Incidents where ICE agents have pulled a weapon. Another 14 episodes where ICE agents have used a weapon that wasn't lethal, like pepper balls and rubber balls, rather, pepper spray. This is not okay. This is not normal behavior. And I think if we pretend that there's a middle ground here, we don't have to come to the middle. Actually, we could just use our eyes and ears and look at what we saw. There was nothing confusing about that video.
But she's not a protester, right? She was there to interfere. She had her car sideways.
So
in the
she
middle of the road.
deserved to be murdered? That can't seriously be your
but
point.
You use the term protester. We keep using that. She's not a protester, okay? She's there to interfere with law enforcement. She has her car sideways in the road. She's clearly been doing this, as has been reported. She's part of an active group to do this.
Regardless of
This
what you
isn't
want to call
protesting.
her, are you justifying her being shot by an IC?
no, it's
Are you
tragic.
justifying her pulling into the officer?
She
hit
She
him
was
with
not
the
pulling.
car.
I'm disputing the basis of that. That's not factual.
But this is
the
very
video
Car's a
shows
deadly
it's
weapon.
not factual.
All right.
She was
Do you
not going
think-
at him. The video shows that.
Go ahead, Darren.
Do you think officers train for this scenario? Yes or no?
I'm sure they do.
All right. Back in the 70s.
And not only that,
Scott,
this
Scott.
personal officer
Scott.
was dragged.
But you answered my
last
question.
summer.
You answered my
Then
question.
he
35
Back in,
stitches.
but listen,
Then he
this
should
is-
not
this
be.
is-
He should be.
That's a former NYPD internal affairs lieutenant. Not some activist, not some TikTok kid, internal affairs. And what does he say? Don't stand in front of the car. The offense is trivial. No felony. Threat passes. Shots continue. Procedurally not sound. Questionable under the law. That alone should end the self-defense fairy tale. When a guy who used the clear cops is basically telling you this is garbage tactics and weak justification, you're looking at a bad shoot dressed up in legalese.
He should be in the position
Back in the 1970s, there was a study done on how police officers should engage individuals in cars. Whenever you and what came out was whenever you shoot a person that's driving a motor vehicle and you're successful, the centrifugal force of that vehicle will continue to move forward. Therefore, you do not defeat the threat. So what do you do in a situation like that? You move away from the car. And we found on a national level that police have gained an overwhelming level of success in terms of trying to get away from the vehicle as opposed to putting themselves in harm's way. And,
Can I ask you another question, Darren? The exchange, we're very focused, rightfully so, on what happened with the officer with the gun. But I'm also curious about the interaction with the other officer who approaches her window. And we see in the video, he says, get out of the effing car, and grabs the door handle, presumptively to try to pull her out. I have questions about that and about that tactic. And I keep hearing people talking about de-escalation being something that seems absent, not just in this situation, but in a lot of interactions that we have observed with ICE and citizens, whether they're protesters or others.
the de-escalation comes with the verbal commands, and the officer may not...
There it is. Scott, convoy boy. Jennings doing what he does the best. Turn a cops into a defendant. What's the structure of his little speech? He go A, B, C, D, turned a big commands, drove into officer, 4 bullet points, 0 actual evidence presented. He's not analyzing the video, he's reading off a chart sheet that exists in his head. And notice the trick, say convoy enough times and suddenly it's not a woman in a car. It's a paramilitary operation. Say felony enough times and suddenly shooting her in the face is just enforcing the law. He even does the fake sympathy routine, like showing fake empathy. I don't like it when anyone dies, but she exercised extremely poor judgment. Yeah, her judgment got her killed. His judgment gets called self-defense.
may not have been successful, but at the same token, you had the ability to step away and merely jot down that license plate number and get that person another point. But what's more so significant is that officer that discharged his weapon put his fellow officer in harm's way. He could have gotten shot because when you look at the trajectory of where these bullets came, they were relatively close to the officer that was standing next to that passenger side door. Therefore, we refer to something as firearms control. We want to know where you're shooting before you discharge your weapon. Remember, after the car passed, you still had an officer that was discharging rounds at the side of the automobile. The threat had already fizzled out. The vehicle is moving forward. And as I mentioned in the earlier part, the centrifugal force of that vehicle is going to continue moving forward even if the operator is shot. And we saw the same thing happen in this video. After the lady was shot, the vehicle continued to move forward and crash into another auto.
Also, don't you think, real quick, that I keep going back to the behavior of the officer that went up and said, "Get out of the effing car." It was very clear that he felt pretty comfortable in terms of his safety with this car and this woman. He walks up, he reaches in, he can see. So if I'm his fellow officer coming this way, I see that he's not screaming, "Gun, gun." He's not freaking out. You know that this is sort of a woman in her car. She's not really a threat. It just felt so ratcheted up for what was happening around him, that gentleman who was taking the photos with his camera. And I felt like he wasn't keying off of what was going on.
I mean, I also think
We can't admit he was hit by the car, correct?
Well, we don't know. We don't know if the camera. No, we don't know if the camera hit the car.
He was hit by the car.
We don't know if the camera was hit by the car in his hand.
We
don't know
see his
that.
leg.
He was hit by the car.
Okay, he was hit by the car. Okay, and he was hit by the car jumping out of the way. In other words, if he had not jumped out of the way, he would have been killed.
I disagree.
I mean,
I disagree. I'm telling you this as a person that's trained for this. I'm telling you this as a former police academy instructor that trained recruits on how to evade a vehicle that's moving forward. We've done studies on this time and time again, and it's proved to be an overwhelming success if the officer steps away.
Here we go. Did you watch how Mercurio, being the reasonable guy, he mentioned he's not left or right. There's a gray area. Really? Two people were wrong? No. There is a gun and a body. One side has state power, weapons, training, the law behind them. The other side has just a car and a mouth. Saying both were wrong is how you wash blood off the badge. You're not describing reality here. You're diluting responsibilities. She's dead. He's alive, employed, shielded by DHSPR and talking heads like Scott. That's not a gray area, that's a hierarchy. Tiffany Cross is the only one on that set talking like she watched the footage with her open eyes. She explains frame by frame how she's turning away, they're closing in, he's calling her an effing bitch. Then she turns the pattern by saying 16 ICE shootings since Trump's second term, 4 deaths, weapons drawn, and used again and again. That's not a one-off, that's behavior, that's culture. And notice how fast the other still scrambled to relabel her. Not a protester, a disruptor, an interferer, part of a group. Anything they can say to make her less of a citizen and more of a target.
And you mentioned he was hit by the vehicle. It is a problem that he was hit by the vehicle, but was he injured? Do you think there was a genuine
She was
injury?
turning away.
But he
She was
jumped-
not
Should he
driving
wait to
her
get
car
crushed to
at
death
night.
and then fight back?
But
or-
even the video shows he
You
was
have to-
turning away from her. So he was
honestly.
raised by the car. She was not driving her car at him. I mean, we could just look at our
Let me just play.
eyes, the video, and see.
I just want to play a little bit of how Trump reacted to questions about this earlier today at the White House.
There was a woman screaming, shame, 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 shame. She was a agitator, probably a paid agitator, but in my opinion, she was an agitator, a very high-level agitator, so professional. She wouldn't stop screaming. I said, this isn't a normal situation. This is a professional troublemaker. You have agitators, and we will always be protecting ICE, and we're always going to be protecting our Border Patrol and our law enforcement.
I just wonder, is it not possible for regular Americans to decide that they disagree with ICE's tactics? They want to yell shame at ICE. That's not a crime. Recording is not a crime. Blowing whistles is not a crime. Why does that make you, A, a professional agitator, or B, as they said earlier in this week, a domestic terrorist?
Well, protesting is perfectly fine in this country. That's not what was happening in this case. And as we saw from the reporting in the last 24 hours, there is a group of people who are being trained to use vehicles in convoys to disrupt ICE operations.
After cross drops, straight facts, what's the panic? Nobody challenges the video, nobody challenges the stats. Instead, they scramble to rename her. Lambert says she isn't a protester, she's an interferer, a disruptor, part of a group. So she deserved to be murdered? They won't say yes, but they won't say no either, because the point isn't the truth, it's classification. Porcher jumps in again, and the ex-Internal Affairs lieutenant repeats reality. Officers are trained to step away, you don't stand in front of a car, you don't keep shooting after the threat passes. At this point, they are not debating what happened. They are debating what to call what happened. And that's the moment journalism gives way to narrative control.
Scott.
Disrupt
To do
and
what
impede
exactly?
ICE
Well, hold
operations.
on. I mean, I think this is important. What are
Disrupt and
What are
impede.
you
Do you have
suggesting that she
quantitative
was
statistics
doing?
to support this conclusion?
Yeah.
I read the article in the New York Post that went chapter and verse
So-
through all the
wait,
training.
so-
Everything in the post is absolutely right.
The New York
Here's-
Post.
I know it's not
Scott,
convenient
here's the
to your
reality.
narrative, but there's
Empirical
training.
data.
There's
There's a
training
cause-
to impede and obstruct. I feel
So
like I'm
Scott,
taking
But that
Scott,
doesn't
crazy pills.
justify getting
Scott,
shot.
I mean,
And there's a
listen,
cause and
I
effect
can't
here.
speak to the crazy pills, but in the video,
I mean, you're denying
in the video,
things that have been openly
but
reported.
Scott, listen, I'm not going to treat the New York Post like the Bible, okay? In the video,
I didn't ask
we
you to. I just
see
asked you to be
the
honest about what we.
vehicle-
No one's disputing
If you
this.
see the vehicle perpendicular in the road, you also see seconds before this shooting happens, another vehicle drive just past her.
She's
The
waving them
vehicle
through.
is coming just like the other one was, encountered her vehicle, drove right around it. So maybe there was an attempt to impede, but that attempt to impede was not enough.
After Cross drops straight facts, watch the panic unfold. Nobody challenges the video now. Nobody challenges the stats. Nobody even says, let's actually clarify what the tape shows. Instead, the conversation collapses instantly into relabeling exercises, not truth-seeking. Lambert jumps in first with the classic dodge. She's not a protester, she's an interferer, a disruptor, part of a group. Notice the strategy here. The goal isn't to describe what the video shows. It's to take a human being and turn her into a category that absolves the shooter. Cross cuts through this, dodge one line, so she deserved to be murdered? Boom, that's the real subtext. They won't say yes, they won't say no, because the entire game here isn't the truth, it's classification. Once you can label a person, a threat, a felony, a convoy, a caravan, suddenly everything else becomes justified regardless of the footage. But then Porcher, the ex-external internal affairs guy, brings the panel back to reality because he actually knows what he's talking about. He says officers are trained to step away from vehicles. You don't shoot through a windshield because the engine revs. You keep shooting after the threat has moved past. That's not training, that's chaos. He's not saying politically correct things, he's saying tactical protocols. This isn't about whether she was a protector or a civilian. This is about whether the office violated basic training. Porcher doesn't retreat into semantics. He dismantles the narrative device right there, not with emotional framing, but with institutional reality. Everybody is trying to assign a label that exonerates the shooter. Nobody is anchoring to what footage shows. Nobody's anchoring to what the training doctrine actually is. Nobody's anchoring to whether deadly force was appropriate. When the actual facts are inconvenient, the strategy becomes protester, interpreter, interferer. Repeat enough qualifiers and eventually the public forgets the basic question. Did that agent violate training and unjustifiably take a life? That's the moment journalism stops and narrative control begins, not with silence, not with reasoned disagreement, but with scramble to rename, recast, and reframe before the footage can speak for itself.
By arrest or death.
The crime is driving your car directly at and into a federal law enforcement officer.
Listen, I don't want us to jump around here because I'm talking about your accusation that, or you're accusing her, like Trump is perhaps, that she's a professional agitator, that she was in some kind of convoy, whatever it is. I'm just asking you, based on what she was actually doing in that moment, how are you so sure that the ICE vehicle couldn't have just driven right around her?
Look, all I can do is look at the video, listen to what the witnesses have said, and look at the facts. These people in these convoys are following ICE around, actively trying to impede law enforcement activity. That's number one, and yes,
Is
that is a
following
crime.
ICE around
and
a
number,
crime?
And
No.
number two, they are also
Is
being
following
trained
ICE around a
to
crime,
actively
Scott?
impede, for the purpose of
Scott,
impeding them.
Is
Yes,
following ICE around a crime?
for the purpose of impeding
But
them.
what
Yes.
do you mean
No,
by
it is
impeding?
not.
Getting in their way, interfering with
She
the
wasn't in
discharge
their
of their
way,
duties.
though, Scott. She was literally
talk
letting
about
them
conducting
through.
governmental
Can we talk about
administration?
I get that. I get that. But don't you think that we actually have to demonstrate that she did that, that she was obstructing their ability to actually do their job? Could they have driven around her? It's a very important
They asked her to
question.
stop and get out of the car. She
That was
wouldn't do
after.
it.
No, that was
Literally
after
Her
seconds.
wife
that.
told
Hold
her
on.
to, quote, drive,
Literally-
baby, drive,
Okay, listen,
and told her
I'm
to
not
drive into the
justifying
guy.
her decision to drive, but I'm saying, watching the video from all the different angles, he says, "Get out of the effing car," and literally within seconds, shots are fired.
After
but
she says, "I'm not
in,
mad."
in the matter of seconds, the
waving
car
cars
moved and hit him in the
So-
shins.
But what would have been the
So I'm
worst?
just
What was the worst thing that happened if she actually got away? Right? Like
They
it
had
was
her
very,
license
it was
plate.
very
They
Getting
could've-
clear
away
that
is
this
not
was
the
not a
issue.
terrorist.
The
Can we-
issue
wait,
is
hang on a second.
he
Can we-
thought she
hang
was
on a second.
running over him in a
Let's talk
car.
about cause and effect. You keep saying they're out there, they're agitating, they're doing these
They
things.
are.
Do you think people are doing this because they're mad? You know why they're doing it, Scott? They're afraid. They don't understand.
They don't
what's
look too-
happening.
they don't look
Hang
too
on a
afraid
second.
to me.
They don't understand what's happening in their communities right now.
Is that
Now,
a good
most
reason to drive
people-
your
hang
car
on,
to a
no,
federal
hang
law
on a
enforcement?
second.
She
We'll
did
get to that
not
in a minute.
drive her
Most
car into a
people
law
are
enforcement.
fine
It's ridiculous.
with cleaning up immigration. I'm fine with it. The border policy is working pretty well. For some people, having guys with masks and no cameras and very aggressive tactics, and at times not having a search warrant, scares people. So what are they doing? They feel like they have to police the police.
Okay.
Now,
if
hang
you're-
on, no, just one second.
I want to
No,
answer
wait,
you because it's a
one more
thoughtful
second.
comment.
Please acknowledge that there is cause and effect in life. That a plumber in Minnesota isn't going, I got nothing to do tonight. I'm going to go agitate. They're afraid and they're protecting each other. So if the government, if
What
Trump
is she
doesn't-
afraid of?
She's afraid of a president that's calling her an agitator when she's not, of Kristi Noem calling her a domestic terrorist when she's not.
Okay.
All of that foments anger and fear, which creates conflict, and that's why
There
we're
My
is
brother.
Let me- okay,
I,
let me
I want to
respond.
answer your question. If you do not like a federal law, if you do not like the way a federal law is being enforced, what we do in this country is call our congressmen, call our legislators, and say, let's change the law. Let's change the policies. What we do not do is drive our cars into and over the people who are simply there.
As you see, Trump doesn't call her a protester, he calls her a professional agitator. Part of a left-wing network paid to rile up federal agents, a claim with no evidence and contradicted by video and eyewitness accounts. And in the studio, Jennings picks up the same bait, baptizes agitator on live television, then seasons it with convoys and training to disrupt an ICE operation. Really? Did you prove that already? Also calling words like felonies, intent, malice. Even says he feels like he's taking crazy pills because people won't treat a New York Post write-up like scripture. But here's what's actually insane. We all watched cars drive around her. The record shows a confused scene, conflicting orders, people filming body language, gestures, not a coordinated assault on ICE troops. But in Scott's world, this became a terror caravan of trained agitators. Why? Because if you can sell her as a trained saboteur with nefarious intent, you don't have to admit the truth. That's the whole trick. If you can rename the human being agitator, convoy, felony, then the bullet becomes a necessary defensive act instead of what it was, an execution justified after the fact.
There enforcing the laws that are on the books.
What about
you can
protest?
change laws. I have no problem with protest. That's not protest. That is impeding federal law enforcement. Again, it's a perfectly legitimate political
No, it
So
position.
we did not
No,
see her.
she wasn't impeding because they could get around.
No, but that's
Let me-
we've only seen 30 seconds of the video. We don't know what was there
So,
for the
so
2
if
hours
you,
of
if
the
you
video.
only seen 30 seconds, then how do you know that she's impeding federal law enforcement? That's literally
and
not what the
continue
video
on the other
shows.
side of the break. But thank you very much to Darren Porcher for
Here's where the convoy fantasy starts to fall apart in real time. Mercurio cuts through Jennings' hysteria with the only point that matters. Even if she was in a convoy, that doesn't justify shooting her. And that right there is the panic trigger, because once you separate the label from the bullet, the justification evaporates. Then Abby lands the factual blow. She refuses to worship the New York Post and goes back to the tape. It shows a civilian car drive around her SUV like it was a stalled vehicle. Seconds before the shooting, no confrontation, no interference, no felony convoy tactics, just traffic. Abby further presses, if this is some grand operation, where's the proof she's even part of it? Even if she was, since when is falling ice a crime? Scott's response is pure narrative engineering here. First he says it's a felony, then it's impeding, then it's coordinated. Notice the pattern here. He keeps changing the charge until he finds the one that makes the shooting sound reasonable. That's not argument. That's retroactive justification. Cross refuses to play along. No, it's not a crime because it isn't. Filming isn't a crime. Driving isn't a crime. So Jennings escalates again. They told her to stop. They told her to get out. She disobeyed. Therefore, the state was entitled to punish her. That is the true worldview on display. Not law, not procedure, no safety. If you just don't comply quickly enough, quietly enough, with the government then the government reserves the right to do anything and narrate the aftermath as self-defense. And that is why the convoy myth matters, because once you can turn a citizen into an insurgent, the bullet stops being controversial and starts being expected.